So, hi everyone, and welcome to this episode 2, season 2. And today we are talking about people, how people are part of the behaviour change process. It's not all down to us and our own willpower. It is really a lot of it is to do with who we surround ourselves with. The networking groups that we're in, the people that we live with, all of that stuff. So I am excited to talk about this. It's not something that I've given a huge amount of thought to. So I'm really excited to hear what you've got to say about this, Serena. I'm sure it will provoke some things that are deep in my mind anyway. So
Yeah.
tell
Well,
us.
hello, Sally. First of
Well,
all, and
hello.
thank you for this lovely episode that we're going to do. I actually think people is a really, 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 really juicy topic.
Okay.
I think I'd probably say that about most of the things that we cover because I'm biased about the world of behaviour change and how we break it down and we make sense of the things that impact how we change as human beings. And I would say that other people play a crucial role in this. And that for anyone listening, if I just said to you, even just to start with, who in your life supports you and who doesn't, that will evoke a response in you. You will instantly, I imagine, be able to think of people and situations where people have been supportive of you or not supportive of you. And maybe you self-reflect and think about times when you've been supportive or not of someone making a change. And so it goes back to that premise, really, that we're not living here in an echo chamber of no one, but anything we do on any journey, in just life in general, we're going to encounter people all the time. And so what I want to do today is to break down some of those things and have a look at that and have a look at how we can then maybe positively impact our own change by looking at the people that we allow in to our lives and our change processes.
What's coming up for me when you're talking is this idea of how we're all wired for connection. We're wired to find connection and avoid rejection. And I think because of that motivation that we have to find connection, and of course there will be some anomalies in that, there will be people who will seek out rejection, possibly for a self-fulfilling prophecy or just to feel weirdly validated, but yeah, it works differently. But for the most of us, that connection element that we have is so powerful and so important because it's so primal. We can't exist without other people. In a hunter-gatherer times, you would have somebody that went to forage, you would have somebody that went to hunt, you would have somebody that went to collect firewood, you'd have people at home mending garments, making garments. We exist, we sustain life because of each other, and that still exists within us. But I think the problem that we're experiencing today is isolation, because we no longer actually need each other for our survival. We can get everything delivered. You've got Amazon, you've got Deliveroo, you pretty much get, you can get your food delivered from the supermarket. And so because it's so convenient, that's just so convenient, and we're creatures of convenience, the easier the better, right? The path of least resistance. Of course, we're going to go to these apps, these smartphones that make our lives much, much, much easier. But the consequence of that is isolation and disconnection, which I think is causing a lot of depression, a lot of even health problems, because we're so much more sedentary at the moment as well. So yeah, I think the lack of connection that we are experiencing because of all of this convenience might be going some of the way to us not perhaps being able to change in the ways that we want to, because we're so isolated. I know for me it has a massive impact. And I appreciate my privilege in that I have the resources to be able to pay to do personal training with a personal trainer. But it really was only because of my personal trainer that I was able to get on this exercise bandwagon and to be able to sustain this level of exercise for 4.5 years so far, you know, which I think is
Well
pretty
done.
cool. Yeah. Usually it's on, off, on, off.
As usual, you've said about 6 things I need to go back on and focus on. There's so much there. I mean,
That's my brain for you.
just to kind of break that down then a little bit. So, just initially going back to that concept of connection being something in many ways that we're hardwired to do. And I would be quite challenging when I say that, in that there will be people listening that feel deeply and highly introverted, and they feel like connection isn't something that they need. And yet I would argue on a human level, at some stage, some form of connection is needed. It's certainly needed for our evolution and for change to take place. Not in all ways. There are things that you can do completely on your own in isolation. But if you think of it from a broader evolutionary perspective, evolution happens as a result of your interaction with your environment, and typically environment includes other living beings. So just, from like I said, a purely evolutionary perspective, that's needed. And I think what came up for me when you were saying that was, in terms of it being important and lots of people maybe feeling isolated, was, the best example that we've had of that is probably COVID. So for those of us that, well, everyone listening to this would have experienced it, obviously. There was a deep sense of isolation for many people. And I think for a lot of people during that time, there'll be people that thought that they didn't need anyone. But what you would have noticed maybe from that experience is you just want the choice to be able to choose when you tap into being around other people, versus it being enforced on you that you cannot interact with other people. You might not like your family very much, but you didn't want to be kept from them either. So
Right.
again, going back to that sense of just being mindful about what we get from being around others.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah,
Go
I
on.
think certainly for me, so this is going a bit personal, I guess, but as I get older, I am much more mindful about who I spend my time with.
Yeah.
And over the years have deliberately chosen very consciously to not surround myself with certain people because they don't enhance my life in any way. And, when we're looking at behaviour change, it might be that I realise I was changing in a way that wasn't serving me, or that just recognising that these people are not your tribe anymore, that they're not your people, that you notice changes in you. And your change might only be emotional. When I say only, I don't mean to belittle it, but it might be that you're experiencing emotions that you are not happy about, that don't serve you, that feel uncomfortable, that starts to be an alarm to the fact that you're with people that it's just not bloody helpful. You just don't want to be around them anymore, to put it frankly.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. And I think sometimes the people that we're around, whether it be partners, family, friends, they've got a different agenda. They're operating literally in a different paradigm, which I find so interesting because of social media, and our feeds are so different from one another's. We could not potentially even know that someone is going down a rabbit hole that is completely different to our rabbit hole, and then we end up with these really polarizing beliefs and opinions about certain things just based on what we've been exposed to on our feeds, the podcasts that we've been listening to. It's that whole thing of, like, I kind of liken it to the Jordan Peterson versus Gabor Mate. Often you find that
Yeah.
you find that you're in one camp or the other, right?
Oh, crikey. And well, yeah, I've got very strong views on Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, which we won't go into on a podcast, as I don't want to be. No.
We don't need to go into that. But what you find is, I've touched on both. I've had a little listen to both.
Yeah.
I like to sort of scrape the best of, and sort of think that, there are decent everyone's got like a level of decency within them, and there must be something a little bit good about what they're saying. So yeah, I like to kind of take a balanced point of view if possible, but also yeah, you know, you can end up, what I'm saying is you can end up being around people, and then very, very quickly you realize, oh my God, we're on totally different paradigms. The way that I'm feeling around this person is not doing my nervous system any good. And so yeah, parting ways is often what is needed, and then setting a boundary. Although we're not talking about boundaries today, that's another episode. But
this is another episode. Yeah, I think I mean, this could very easily go into a different kind of podcast where we look at, because it's also a very important conversation around your decision to part company with certain people in your life. But when it comes back to looking at the premise of behaviour change and the role that people play, I mean, certainly when you're looking at that from the perspective that, you know, just simply put, you want to make a change in your life.
Yeah.
How are those people in your life going to respond to that change that you're making? And something that I teach, so when we look at this just from a very simplistic perspective, and I'm doing this work with healthcare practitioners, and we look at this, I do talk about just quite simply that when you're making a change, you changing means that people in your life have to make a change in some way as well, even if it's just that they have to change how they view you because you're changing. So that in itself is a change. And not everyone might like that. And therefore, when you're changing something about your life, it's interesting just to note who might be supportive of you doing that. Because actually, when you're changing something, it is very, very important to have the support that you need to do that. So if it's something significant, you're making, for example, a lifestyle change, and if you just look at that as a very simple kind of model, if you are with a partner, maybe you've got kids and you're in a home, and maybe you realize that you could all eat a bit more healthily. It might not be as simple as you just making changes to your diet. It might be that, you know, you are going to make those changes to your diet, and you as a result start to change, but there might have to be some changes in the household because of that. Meals might change, family meals might change. How do other people in the household respond to that? Is your husband or partner or wife or whoever's sharing your life with you, are they supportive of that change that you want to make? Or are they bringing more of a negative response to the table in response to you wanting to make that change? So just considering who in your life, and I refer to them often as cheerleaders without making it sound too kind of tacky, but who cheerleads you in the change that you want to make? Do you have those cheerleaders, people that are aligned with the change that you want to make, and they support what you're doing?
Such gold in that. And I think that's why coaching has become really popular in the last few years, because if you don't have friends and family supporting you, a coach will undoubtedly support you. They might challenge you in certain ways, but they're certainly going to support the goals that you want in your life, one would hope. And yeah, I do. I mean, I know for me as a therapist or hypnotherapist, I have regular supervision. I couldn't do my job without it. There's a lot of stuff, you know, obviously you're exposing yourself to many different types of people and the type of changes that they want. But for me, the supervision, what that gives me is just, I call it my sanity check. Actually, supervision for me is like a sanity check, and without that, you can really spiral internally and not always know what's yours and what somebody else's. But also, what that does is it helps me to maintain a boundary, you know, a client therapist boundary, which can often bleed out if you are somebody who really likes to help. And this might not necessarily be a therapist, this might be a mother or maybe a daughter or an auntie, you know, you could be anyone and have relationships with people. But if you're constantly wanting to try and help, how might that be affecting you? I feel like I'm going into boundaries here,
Yeah,
but
it is a bit more boundary work. Yeah, yeah. I
I
mean,
think
still,
perhaps maybe if you are working with people, um, you can't separate that because it's going to be an issue that comes up. But I guess what we're talking about here is how can people either motivate your change, or how can they unmotivate your change,
yeah,
essentially? How can they
and
thwart your change?
and you're right. I mean, it does start to, and the conversation naturally progresses into boundaries, doesn't it?
Mm,
Because obviously, what we're saying is, if someone isn't supportive of your change, then you have choices around that, in terms of the boundaries that you put in place if they're not supportive,
yeah.
or just not wanting to have a relationship with them, which is, again, it is acceptable, but as adults we don't talk about it a lot.
Mm,
It's often how you see the breakdown of a relationship is there's some kind of lack of support for someone's change in some way. We all know anecdotally the story of the partner who makes the life and health changes and becomes slimmer and feels more attractive in their body, but the partner doesn't like it. This big
mm,
change in their partner is confronting for them because they make it mean something about who they are and their relationship with them. So,
yeah.
like I said, disclaimer, that's anecdotal, but we all kind of
Mm,
understand that anecdotal story. But at the core of that is the fact that people will always play a role in your life in some way, and there will be people that I suggest, in terms of my role, that when you are making a change, that you do find someone, that you do find just even one person that does support you on that journey of change, because
yeah,
I
even if
think
it's
it's an integral part to you being able to do some key things, which is not only just have the encouragement and the support of someone, which we know we need that, we need support when we're doing something, but to provide that motivation, maybe the accountability, to share knowledge, to share resources. Maybe even you collaborate with someone when you're making a change or doing something new, as we did on the podcast, right? Episode 1.
yeah,
Yeah, this is a
yeah.
collaboration. This is a change, something that I wanted to do but never did. And
Mm-hmm.
partly because it felt so hard, but the offer of collaboration enabled me to do something, to take
Right.
on a new project. Um,
Yeah, because there are
so,
barriers to, for example, starting a podcast, you've got to learn the tech. I already knew the tech because I had run another podcast. And
mm,
so it's those shared resources can be
mm,
so valuable. And it's not just physical resources, it's mental resources, experiential resources, friendships, coaches, mentors can offer that. Maybe they've been through something really similar and they can offer you advice or just a different point of view. I'll just help you feel like you're not alone. I think that's the main thing. Like
mm,
us humans, like I said at the beginning, we're wired to find connection. And if we know that somebody has been through what we have been through, that it just feels so validating, and that
yeah.
disarms the nervous system, that makes us feel safe, that makes us feel a bit more secure, which then gives us a stable platform with which to springboard ourselves onto that change, no matter what that is. That might be becoming more visible, for example. It might be going into a gym. If you've previously felt that gyms are intimidating for you, maybe actually no, I get, now this person's told me everyone's really self-absorbed in the gym and they're probably not really looking at you. I now feel more comfortable going into a gym.
Mm,
But without that frame of reference that we get with other people, sometimes we can just get really stuck in our heads, and that can be super, super paralyzing. We just get stuck in this cognitive dissonance and you don't go anywhere from there. You get stuck in a conflict where part of you wants to, but the other part of you doesn't want to. And it's like this tug
mm,
of war, coming back to the previous episode on blocks and barriers, that tug of war, like one part of you's pulling one way, one part of you's pulling another way. From there, you're not moving anywhere. And I think that is why coaching, mentoring, counseling, therapy can be so mobilizing, because it helps to kind of cut that tie.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
think For me as well, just again, one of the most important things from what you're saying is there's something about knowing when to step outside of what you already know to seek help from a person who maybe is more able to help you in a different way. So, you know, when you look at this from a modelling perspective, for example, so if you want to make a change, it might be that the current pool of people that you're engaged with is not where you will find elevation to the change that you want to make. So you need to go outside of what you already know and who you already know to seek others who have done what you wish to do.
Wow, I
You
love that.
know, so to go and take yourself outside of the pool of people, the pool of resources that you kind of currently have, think about who's already doing it. So who's already made the change that you want to make, that you can then surround yourself with? Can you surround yourself with others who will elevate you, who inspire you? We actually, as human beings, we learn more through modeling, really. It's something
Yeah.
that I say to parents all the time, you know, again, disclaimer, non-parent talking about parenting, but children really copy what you do. They don't necessarily listen to what you say, and I think we can all relate to that. You know, a parent saying don't do this, and then they're kind of doing this naughty thing themselves. Don't smoke, says the parent smoking. A child watches what you do and they learn from what you do and who you are. This conversation comes up a lot with me, with clients I've had in the past who are parents, who are trying to parent their children around doing things like taking care of themselves and not being anxious, not listening to what people say when it's negative, when they're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they're not taking care of themselves. They're, you know, so I'm saying to those people that actually it all starts with you. You do this for you, and the children will follow, because the children will see what you've done to take care of yourself and how you respond in those situations.
I couldn't agree more, Serena. Yeah.
Yeah.
And my husband he's a mental health practitioner for CAMS for the NHS. And often he will be, you know, the child will present with a certain issue and he'll be really wanting to advise the parent. And a lot of it is advising the parent to address their anxiety, address their stress, because the children are modelling off that.
Yeah.
So yeah, what you've said absolutely validates that experience that
Yeah.
we have as well.
And so thank you for sharing that. And that's really powerful. And I love that your husband does that. He's had a journey to that amazing career as well and worked really hard for that. But we haven't changed as adults. We still do the same thing. You know, we're just more discerning. We just are more discerning in a more educated way usually when we get older, and we can talk the talk around the changes we're going to make, and we can do our own research and think we've got it all sussed. But there's nothing like throwing yourself into a situation where you're able to model what other people do. So, you know, if we just kind of cut through the chaser a little bit and get to the core of what I'm saying, if you want to go and start climbing mountains, go and surround yourself with mountain climbers. Don't just watch a YouTube video and try and figure it out on your own. You will get so far doing that. I'm not saying don't do the learning yourself, but to be around people who are modeling it, who are doing it, who are living it, who speak the language, your learning is elevated tenfold by surrounding yourself with those people. If you want to start a business, go and talk to people who have a successful business, one that you like the look of. Go and ask to be mentored by them, you know, and carefully model yourself around those people, not plagiarize. That's another story. But, you know, surround yourself with people who are doing, or, you know, the things that you aspire to do. Where can you surround yourself with people who are doing that? If you want more play, it can go on to values as well. If you are missing play and fun in your life, go and surround yourself with people who embody that for you. What does that look like? Go and start to surround yourself and be in situations where the energy of the people is holding the value that you're lacking.
Yeah. And
it's
this
a
is
fast
why,
track to evolution. Yeah. Sorry,
yeah,
come on.
completely agree. And I'm always, my menopausal clients that I have, I'm always saying to them, follow people on social media who are doing what you want to be doing. So you've got that influence for starters, for starting point, right? I
Yeah.
know we're talking about
Yeah.
being in person with people. Do you know Train with Joan? Have you come across
I
her?
love her.
She's
So
great, isn't she?
inspiring. Yeah.
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 I think
Yeah.
she started her fitness journey at age 60.
Yeah.
And,
Maybe even been older, but yeah.
maybe, yeah. And she's lifting heavy, she's modeling. I mean, yeah, she's just picture of health. But it came back to something what you were saying about modeling behavior. So I actually belong to a networking group called Co-Women. Shout out to Co-Women in Sussex. And one of the people in Co-Women is a triathlete.
Oh, I
I've
love it.
interviewed her on my menopause mindset podcast actually, and she is the one who recommended I start Couch to 5K because I found myself getting quite breathless on a flight. So I was like, what is this? Like, I can't breathe, I can't get oxygen in. And she said to me, try Couch to 5K. I've recommended it to so many people. And I've kind of been looking at her from the sidelines because she's this incredible, she runs marathons, she does Ironman, Tough Mudder, all this kind of like hardcore elite athlete type stuff. And just by kind of looking at what she's been doing, reading her blogs, hanging out with her in the networking meetings that we have, asking her questions, not even literally training with her. I mean, God, imagine if I was training with her. But just because of that, taking someone that I thought, wow, get me some of that, please, and then situating myself in her vicinity, I was able to extract some of that energy for myself. And it's funny because when I'm running, like I have her in my mind as well. I think it's quite subconscious,
Yeah.
but just that idea of, oh, when I reach 5K, I'm going to tell Camille about this. And she'll be super happy and
Yes.
super like proud of me. And then I'll get a bit of validation for all my hard work, So
There's also something there that's really beautiful just about the accountability. So in a strange way, someone who's done what you would aspire to do, maybe not fully to the triathlon level. I don't know what your aspirations are, and I'm not to take that away from you. That sounds completely possible, but yeah, there's an unconscious accountability there in that you kind of want to check back in with her. She's offered you something and you want to go and report back and tell her that you've done it. That in itself is a powerful tool when we're looking at change and people supporting the change that you're making and kind of providing that accountability for you. So that's a really beautiful example of just the modeling aspect of people, as well as there's that little bit of accountability there as well. So yeah, I love
and
that.
interestingly, I'm not one for accountability. Like
You're doing it again.
I know.
You don't. You want to rebut all the trends, Sally. I love you. You're the rebel on the podcast.
Well, this is it. I think obviously I need accountability, but I don't like to admit I need accountability.
I love it. Yeah, so are you saying, that's interesting, are you saying if she said, Sally, can you check in with me and tell me what you've done, that actually you would be like, I'm not sure about that now?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So it's kind of like accountability, but on my own terms, like just quietly in the background, I'll be getting on with this because I've chosen to, because it means something to me. It's aligned with my values. I don't want to be on flights being breathless. I actually do want to see how far I can take this. And if I've decided, like we said before, I don't like the word goals. I've reframed the word goals into, I flipped it. It's not a goal, it's a choice. So I've chosen to get to 5K, and I will get to 5K, whether it takes me 3 months or a year, I will get there. I mean, I've had to navigate a really bad back, a really bad knee, the flu, and I haven't given up. I've kept going despite those barriers. So I'm pretty sure I will get to 5K. But if I had somebody, I'd go the other way. If someone was constantly checking in with me, I'd be like, no, I'm not going to do this now.
So why? So tell me why, because this might help other people. So what is it about the checking in? Because so the reason I'm asking that question is there'll be people listening where some people think they want that. They want someone to constantly check in with them. But if you'll get other people, so I'm very like you with that.
Are you?
If someone wanted to keep checking with me, there's a few choice words I'd have for them.
I'd be like, this is more about you than me.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. So what is it? What's your reaction to that? So how do you interpret that? If someone's saying to you, if someone was checking in, how do you interpret that? What's going on?
Well, unless it was kind of pre-agreed that,
Right.
we were going to check in with each other once a week at pre-designated time and just sort of, do what we're doing, riff, basically.
Yeah.
I think that would be fine. I'd be okay with that. But if it was just like constant WhatsApp messages or, because with a lot of coaching, you do get WhatsApp support, don't you? Now, I always flip it and I say to my clients, I'm not going to check in with you. This is down to you to check in with me, to share something with me that you think is part of your healing journey. If it's been pre-agreed, I may check in with them the next day just to see how they are. If they've had a bit of a wobble or something, then I may do that. But I don't constantly, because I've had that done to me and it feels like it's the therapist looking for validation or the coach looking for validation that their work is working.
Interesting.
And so that just gives me a bit of the ick. But yeah, I don't, beyond that, I'm not sure. Beyond that, I'm not sure why. What about you? Why don't you like it?
Because so for me, it slips into parent mode. I don't need parenting, so I'm not a child. So I feel like that puts me in child state.
Which is disempowering.
It's just disempowering for me. Although I notice how it's interesting because I kind of relate to what you're saying from a coaching perspective. I'm very similar in that I don't want to provide so much of a framework that I feel that I'm actually creating someone. This is in the past when I used to do like one-on-one work as well. That I'm creating someone who now is so overly reliant on the scaffold that I've created that they cannot stand up on their own. So I don't believe any coaching or therapy should become so intrinsic to someone's existence that you take it away and they crumble. So I do appreciate that at the start of a change process, someone might need a little bit more scaffold to their change. So again, if you're listening to this, if you're making a change, you need to choose essentially the right coach, therapist, support that fits for you. And actually remembering that as a whole and complete adult with your own thoughts and feelings, you get to say what that is. So you get to request your needs to someone else. And actually a good coach will help you figure that out from the start.
Yeah.
So it's not a one size fits all. It might be that if you're making a really big change, that it's actually normal to have a little bit more scaffolding and help and support at the start. But to stay there is not change, is it?
No, it comes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. I think we were alluding to this idea that you're the one that needs to do the work. So if people are coming to me for a hypnotherapy session because they want me to wave a magic wand and just do this and abracadabra, off you go, you're changed, that wouldn't work because it's not coming from them. And again, it's like disempowering. They're giving their power away to me. It's a collaboration. It's what's the word? It's a co-creation. When you work together with someone, whether that's psychotherapy, coaching, whatever, it's a co-creative process. You've chosen to work with me because you like me or whatever, something I've said you resonate with, or, you think I'm a okay therapist, you want to give it a go. We have a consultation, we vibe off each other. I ask you some questions. I see if there's an energetic buzz between us. And sometimes there isn't. And I'm like, you know what? I don't think I can help you. And I will send somebody on into a different direction. Maybe I'm not the right therapist. Maybe it's outside of my scope. Maybe I feel they need a different approach. So then we've got that established. There's an electricity between us, a magnetism. They come for the therapy and I work with them. If they're coming with an expectation that I am going to fix them, they are going to be gravely disappointed because it's not going to work. And that has happened in my practice. And as a result of that, I've, really tightened up my terms of engagement and my waiver and all of that stuff, because you, the therapist, you, the client, can affect your change. Through your will, through your decisions, through your choices. And it really is up to you to affect your change one way or the other with the help of someone else. Someone else can help you to see things differently. They can ask you questions that make you see things differently, or, assist in that process. But ultimately, you're the one, when you walk out of that therapy room, you're the one that has to keep it going. You have to keep listening to that recording that I give you. You have to apply the tools. If you go away and let it all go, then that's a choice. There's deeper work to be done, but it always comes back to that sense of who's really running the show.
Love it. And I just kind of want to go what she said. I mean, I don't want to bore people, because I think I'm very aware of the fact that I often say when I teach this, because I do, a lot of my life is spent teaching about behaviour change. And in my own teaching, I talk a lot about co-creation, actually. So I love the fact that you've used that phrase. And it's something that is actually, so if I can just take an example from my world, which is teaching healthcare practitioners. So a lot of the practitioners I teach, say maybe physios or osteopaths, someone who, could have some kind of hands-on work involved in the consultations that they have. A lot of the therapists that end up doing my courses and my training want more help around having conversations to help elicit intrinsic motivation to change, because what they find is they get a lot of patients who do something very similar to what you've described, which is they're coming along and saying, fix me. I'm thinking that the whole process of having physiotherapy or any kind of intervention like that looks like lying on a table and having someone hands-on manipulating them or rubbing them, and then they're going to be healed. And it's often a shock to the system to realise that actually a lot of this involves them, most of it involves them going off and exercising in between sessions and doing the at-home prescription, which is a shock. But what you'll find is, again, going back to the last episode around blocks and barriers, and we talked about the kinds of people who are willing to change versus those that are not. If someone is willing to change and they know why they want to do it, and you can maybe help them unravel some of that stuff, you'll see those people, just as you've identified in your own practice, those that are willing to do the work to make the change because they really want this. And, they've done the work, they know why they want to do it, they know what the payoff is to not doing it, they've had someone help them kind of identify some good goals, and you've co-created those. I want to come back to that. But you will always get that subset of people that you've just not told them what they want to hear. You've not told them, I can fix you, or if we do this, or if we give you this pill, you'll be fixed. So it goes back to, I know you weren't keen on the phrasing victim mentality, but, the identity around that narrative that people have around just their story around, you don't understand me, this is something that you need to help me with because I can't move out of this place. If someone's identity is very stuck in that person who is ill, who has a diagnosis, who has something wrong, then sometimes those identities are incredibly difficult to shift. And what you might find as a practitioner, for example, is and I don't know if you found this for you, is if they don't hear what they want from you, they'll go and find another one. So what you find is often those people stuck in identity who don't want to co-create, which looks like them taking responsibility for their own change, they'll just go and find a practitioner who will actually appease that for them.
I
One who
see.
maybe steps into parent for them, tries to make it all better, who's stepped into rescue. We'll look at all of these roles and we'll look at boundaries in another episode. But sometimes when those people who, essentially I'm saying really don't want to make a change, they'll go and find the people in their, they'll try and find people that will actually go along with their story and go along with their narrative, which is why you get some people staying with therapists for years, because actually it's totally fulfilling what their needs are in terms of staying where they are.
Right. They're not moving, they're not progressing, but they are getting validation.
Yes, totally. So it's actually delightful and delicious to stay there. And all of the stuff that they're learning in that space allows them to have more of it builds on the narrative that they already have, which is maybe, I can make up lots of different things, which I won't, but it keeps them stuck. It keeps them on not making a change. So actually the people that you choose to help you is also really important.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole big thing around rapid transformational therapy, because Marissa Peer, the founder of RTT, she has this narrative that kind of therapy keeps you stuck in the problem, or it can do if you have that type of mentality like you've just described. If you're getting a huge amount of validation, you're not actually shifting the problem. You may not be, you might. I mean, a lot of the time on the consultation form, I will ask people, what have you tried so far? And I will see a lot of psychotherapy counselling. This is not to undermine psychotherapy and counselling
No,
at
not
all,
at all.
because I've had it in the past and it's been super helpful, especially when it comes to understanding my relationships and understanding how my past played out in my relationship. I find with therapy I get a lot of understanding, but not necessarily. There is a shift in behavior from my point of view, but just because I think I'm that type of personality with that growth mindset. But if you have that fixed mindset, not always sure that psychotherapy or counselling can help you beyond validation. Coming back to RTT is a complete process with a beginning, middle, and an end. The beginning being the kind of excavation, like why, what happened to you in the past. The middle being complete validation, like, well, no wonder you have this issue. Like, anyone that had come through your set of circumstances might have presented with the same issue. It's just your body, your mind. It's a coping mechanism, and we understand now. And then the final part is, well, now we know this, what are we going to do differently? So how are we going to mobilize you? How are you going to take back control? How are you going to take back the power? Using all of that subconscious reprogramming and that positive suggestion therapy and all of that to really help people change that internal narrative. And that sometimes is where we can get stuck, and that can sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes if it's not going to work in one session, that's because there's that element of self-sabotage that kind of wants to keep repeating the first bit, that just wants to excavate and find out and validate and then go back, and there's more and there's more, and they're not jumping onto that forward trajectory, like moving forward. Yeah.
And again, for me, there's lots of reasons why that happens. It might be that there's other things to uncover there that need working on, other things that need to be brought to the surface and be worked through. And it might also be as simple as the payoff is too great. It's actually, you get more from staying there. Again, and you have to look at someone's whole life, and they have to be able to look at that eyes wide open to know what it is they're getting from it. Not everyone can go there, because you have to be so brave to want to really look at that, because you're essentially shining a light on what you get out of staying stuck.
Yeah.
Which we all do. I would argue that we all do it, and we've all done it at some stage in our lives. There were, right back to the start of the whole podcast series, I said, it's brave work to look at this, because you have to be really, really honest with yourself, and just utterly honest about just how you think and how you behave in order to be able to change anything.
Yeah, the word that came up for me there was risk. It can be quite risky to change. As we coming back to the beginning of this episode, who might you alienate if you make this change? parents, especially when you're working
Yes.
with like conditions like daddy's little girl, mummy's little boy, to truly become the adult, there's a huge risk of like emancipation
Mm-hmm.
from family, and that now you have to stand on your own 2 feet. Not everyone wants to do that, and that's fine. That's
Yeah.
absolutely fine. Like it may not be the right time for you.
No. No.
um there might be more for you to go through, more to experience.
Mm-hmm. And something else I do want to pick up on, because I feel like I have to speak to this. So you alluded to, or we both alluded to, maybe some therapists kind of keeping you stuck. And you did say this, but I would just want to echo your
Yeah.
sentiments, which is I'm a really big fan of therapy. And for me, it comes down to the quality of the practitioner.
Right.
I'm going to just call it here, but there are some shit ones. There really
Mm.
are. They shouldn't be practicing, in my opinion. They've not done the work themselves. They don't get the right supervision. They haven't had the right training. And they, yeah, I feel like I've been quite brave saying that. And I'm
Well
wondering how
done.
much stick I get for it. It's about being a good practitioner. There are really, really bloody good ones out there who've done the due diligence, they've done the work, they've got the qualifications, they check in with themselves, they've got objectivity. No one's perfect because they're also human. We're all human. But there are absolutely some people who I think shouldn't be practicing. I've seen some really, really bloody awful, damaging therapists and practitioners out there. And I just think, how did you get to where you are? Like,
Yeah.
this should not be happening. So actually, as a side note, disclaimer, or not disclaimer, but a piece of advice, I always say that finding the right therapist is like, which I'm not, by the way, but finding the right one is like putting on a pair of shoes and getting the right pair of shoes. You might have to try on several pairs before you find the right fit. So
Yeah.
just because one has been shit, don't think they're all the same.
Yeah.
So go and try another one. And you referred to the energy and kind of having the connection with someone. So it works both ways. And I think you'll find that with a good therapist as well, as they care enough to want to have that positive interaction as well. It's not just money coming in. It's not just another client that they're seeing, tick box. They care because they care about the work.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, so just if you're listening to this and you're considering any therapeutic process, or just, find a good one for you.
That's interesting. That reminds me of something that someone said to me actually on a discovery call was, yeah, but you're paid to care. And I'm like, you know what? I
Ooh.
actually care. Like the cost, talking about cost versus benefits, versus
Yeah.
benefits. The cost of me working with someone who I don't get a good vibe off of, our personalities just don't gel or whatever,
Yeah, good fit.
is so high. I have to, and it's not cost effective because then I have to go and pay for extra supervision to sort that mess out in my head. So it's not actually cost effective. I'm not doing it just for the money. Obviously I'm paid, but there has to be a good energetic fit. It's not just me being paid to work with someone, so I'll take on anyone. I have made that mistake.
That's a really interesting comment from that person. You're paid to care. That's so loaded.
Yeah.
That's so loaded. I mean, that's a whole podcast in itself.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think we should maybe wrap up this conversation, because I feel like we could go on. And actually, it might come up in conversations again. I'm sure it will, because, well, we encounter people every day, don't we?
just before we do finish, I want to ask you a quick question. Are you part of any networking? Do you do networking, like a kind of group membership thing?
No, I have been in the past. I mean, back when when you start a business and you don't know anything, I think everyone goes, oh, I should do networking. And I went to many networking things, and considering I was looking to grow my business, I didn't grow it at all. I just found that the networking I was going to, everyone just wants to talk about themselves. And, in the work that you do when all you're doing is listening to people, I was just going to another arena listening to people. I was like, oh, I'm done. So I'm not saying that they aren't good. I'm more inclined to join other groups now that give me pleasure. And I'm part of groups that do things that I enjoy. Like, there's a group of people that often go on a Sunday and we go swimming in the lake. So It's things that I get enjoyment from that I want. And I sing again. I'm singing again with a group. So it's being around people that are kind of filling my cup.
Yeah.
Because actually, I think I said that again, kind of earlier on in the series, that the thing that I really want to focus on this year is kind of doing more things that bring balance. So much of my work, so much of my life is work, that actually the bit that's actually lacking for me is the fun and the play. And that's so important to me. So I need to surround myself, or want to, with that more than anything.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then that informs the
How
work.
about, it totally does. Like another thing I've actually brought into my life is there's a day a month basically when I go and have a day, and even though I think I can't afford the time because I'm so busy, I take a day off to go and do something creative. So for me, that looks like going to art galleries or museums. Like I get a lot. My cup is really full after I've been visually inspired by things and thought about things. So I've really brought that back into my life to fill my own cup first.
Yeah.
How about you?
Have to.
Is there any events, any networking or groups you're a part of? I bet you're a part of loads, aren't you?
Well, I do. Yes, I am part of a networking group, but I do, just come back to what you're saying about art galleries and that. I think as practitioners, it's so important to be out in the world and be existing, have relationships, go and look at art, as when I was doing my songwriting degree, we were encouraged to down tools and stop writing songs for like a period of time, because the well can dry up. And so by going out there, looking at art galleries, going to museums, it's inspiring, going to watch a gig, listening to music where you're not the one having to output. It's inspiring, and you do become a more rounded human. You have reference points that you can pull on now when you're working with other people, and to inform your own behaviour change as well. So important. And you can synergize and synthesize so much that you see into your own life and any kind of changes that you want to make. Otherwise, I think we become quite one-dimensional as well. There's nothing worse than going to a dinner party with someone that's just got one element of their life that they're passionate about, and they can't reference from any other things. I don't know if you've ever been exposed to someone like that. It's kind of a bit of a snore fest.
So something really, a story came to mind. I might save that. I'll save that for when we get off the podcast.
Okay. I'm privy to so much.
This has been a joy, Sally. Thank you so much. I think we had a little, like a wiggly conversation there, where we covered a lot of little things, but hopefully people have taken some value from it.
Yes, amazing. Thanks, Serena. Loved it again.
Thank you. See you soon.
See you again. That's not what you want, is it? Ooh, I've got my particularly massive glasses on today.
You look so characterful. You're such a strong character. You're such a strong brand, Sally Garozzo.
Yeah, what the fuck? Let's start that again. Yeah.
I was asked for a meeting the other day. Someone actually said to me, "Can we have a meeting to discuss your brand?" And I was like, what brand? there is no brand. This is something I clearly need to think about. And it's also so British. Oh, you look lovely. And I do that thing where I'm like, I got this for 50p in Tesco's. That's me. Like, totally belittle any compliment that someone pays
not letting it in, not really, just like owning. Yeah, you know what? This is my brand. This is who I am. This is what I love. Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, I would say you do have a brand.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Today on What the Bleep is Behaviour Change, we're talking branding. Or lack thereof.
Brand misinterpretation.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
Right,
Let's go.